Just before we get into scraping, I just want to talk very quickly about the ethics of scraping. So today I'm going to show you how to scrape a governmental website from the UK. We're going to be interested in petitions, okay? So we're going to go into that website here and I'm going to deactivate this. Go there, perfect. Okay, that's the website that we're going to scrape. You can scrape lots of websites with the code that I'm going to show you today, but some websites you need to be aware that they forbid, okay, they ban scraping. So you want to avoid scraping websites that you do not have the right to scrape. And also, I think it's always a good idea, especially if the website that you want to scrape is a small website hosted by an individual. Maybe ask the person before if they have the data available that they can send to you. Because if too many people scrape, or if your scrape code is too heavy, you can bring down the website, okay, technically. I mean, if it's a big website, you would need to send lots and lots of people scraping it to have this effect. But just be aware that you cannot just go free for all on the internet, scrape everything. There are some consequences based on the websites that you want to scrape. Okay, now let's jump into the fun part. So we want to go into this web scraping folder here, and here we want to click on teaching. And we're going to be using this code right here, okay? So web scraping with R. What you can do is either you can download it, you can, if you want, simply copy paste it within RStudio. I have the version right here. So I'm going to give you a second to open it, and then we're going to go step by step to see how to use this code to scrape the website that I just showed you. And if you do not have lots of experience with R, scraping is, I think, quite surprisingly, something that is very, very simple to do. Okay, it's one of the things that you can actually do if you have very little experience with R, because the code that we're going to work with today, you simply need to modify it very slightly for each website that you want to work with. Good. So we have this code, okay, and we're going to go through it step by step. The first thing that you want to do is to install the packages that we need for this specific code, okay? So the packages that we're going to use are there, okay? And if you're not really aware of what the packages in R is, basically if you played video games when you were younger, Sims, for instance, sometimes you can buy extension packs, okay? A package is like an extension pack. You want to install it and have it there. And once you have it, you want to load it within your library. Okay, so everyone, if you do not have these packages installed onto your computer, simply select this code and run it. Okay, I'm not going to do it because I already have the packages installed. It's something that you only need to do once. And this takes a few seconds. It's normal. You're going to see here, you're going to have code that's going to appear in the console. Okay. The next thing that you want to do is to load these packages within the library. And I'm sorry, I know this is very, very basic for people who are used to working with R, but just to make sure we're all on the same page here. What you want to do is to run this code. And there's two ways to run the code. You can either use command return, or you can simply use this function right here. Do you have any questions at this stage? We did too much just for the general setup. Is everyone fine? So again, what I'm using here is this GitHub link, which is in the chat of the WebEx for the people who just joined. And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So we installed the packages. We have the packages loaded within the library. The next thing that we want to do is actually jumping into this scraping activity, okay? So the first thing that we want to do is to create a function called scraping, which is what my code is doing here. This is the code in R to create a function. You do not need at this stage, whatever your level with R, you don't need to understand exactly what, how to create functions in R. What you need to understand is that within this function specifically, what we do is we identify nodes within a specific website, and we're going to ask the function to go scrape that website. Okay. The thing that we need to do that is an extension, ideally for Google Chrome. It exists also for different web interfaces, but it's called Selector Gadget. And I'm going to show you how, with this Selector Gadget tool, we can identify nodes in the website that I just showed you with the petitions from the UK government. Okay, so you have the link here. It's on line 21 of the code. If you go there, okay, it's going to bring you on this web page. So Selector Gadget looks like this. Okay, I'm going to show you how to use it, but if you go down the page, you can click on try a new Chrome extension. It should take just a few seconds for you to install it. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. And for the people who already have it, or it just worked for you, maybe you want to go onto this petition website that I was talking about, and the link for that is on line 30. Sorry. So if you go on line 30, you have the link right here. But for now, let's just all install Select Your Gadget. And once you have Select Your Gadget installed, what you have is this little icon here on your Google Chrome. Perfect. Okay, I'm just gonna go, assume that everyone has it. If I'm going too quickly, you can always, write in. I should slow down a bit, but we only have 1 hour, so I don't want to lose too much time. So perfect. We have Select Your Gadget installed in our Google Chrome. What we want to do is to go onto this governmental web page. Okay, right here. Again, the link to this web page is on line 30, so petitions.parliament.uk, petitions, etc., etc. Okay, so this is the web page that we're interested in. What we can see from this web page, first glance, is we have different petitions that are currently open with the government. We have the title of the petition right here. We have the number of signatures. If we're interested in this information, we might want to scrape it. And we can also see that there's lots of different pages. Okay, we're here on page 1, we have 50 different petitions, but there's actually 17 pages. So in a few minutes, I'm going to explain to you how to ask R to not only scrape this first page, but to go through all the 17 pages. Good. Let's go back to Select Your Gadget. Okay, we have this extension right here. We want to click on it. The first thing that I want to scrape, theoretically, might be the title of the petition. So I have Select Your Gadget activated. What I can see is that right here I have this rectangle that appeared, okay? And this rectangle is going to be useful to indicate what is the node of the specific information that I'm getting at. How do we do this? Is I simply click on the title of the petition. That's what I want to have, right? So what I can see is that Select Your Gadget right here is selecting all the information that it thinks I want to scrape. So it looks like it's doing a pretty good job, right? So everything that is in yellow, it thinks that I want to scrape, and indeed, it's what I want. But if I go down, what I can see is that it's also thinking that I want to scrape all of this. So it thinks that this here is the same type of information that this is here, and it's not the case, right? So what we want to do to unselect these informations that we do not want, we want to click again on any information that is selected, highlighted in yellow, but that we're not interested in. Okay, so I click on it again. And here I can see in this little rectangle right here that I have 50 elements that are selected. And I know, because I know the website, that this means that I have the correct information, because there's actually 50 petitions on that page. So again, what did I do? I just want to make sure everyone understands. I'm going to clear this. Okay, I clicked on Select Your Gadget to activate it. Okay, I saw this little rectangle there. Then I clicked on the title of the petition right here. I selected the titles of the petition, but Select Your Gadget selected too much information. So I clicked again to unselect some of the information. And now I have here the node of what I'm really interested in. So this here, petition open A, okay, I want to copy, and technically it's already in the code, okay? But technically what you want to do is to insert it right here. And what this code is doing is it's asking R to read this HTML text, and it's applying it to this node information, okay? And then I want to create a vector, okay? So a column in a table. A table is a bit like a data frame. It's kind of a fussy data frame. Doesn't matter at this stage. But what I want to do is basically create a column called petition title, in which I have the information for this specific node, which is the title of the petition. So perfect. Okay, that's pretty intuitive. You want to scrape other websites. The only section you want to change is actually this. Now let's say we're interested in the second information, which is the number of signatures. Okay, and right after we do this, I'm going to ask you if you have questions or any difficulties doing it. So we want the number of signatures. What are we going to do? We're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to go on Select Your Gadget. Let me close it. Okay, start from scratch. Then we're going to select here the number of signatures. And I can see already that I have 50 items. Okay, so this was actually in one shot able to understand what I wanted. And I have this node called count. Okay, now I want to copy it, then go here and paste it. Okay, it's already there, so it doesn't change anything. So for these two things, what I did was simply ask R to, we didn't run it, okay? We're building the function. We're going to use it in a few minutes. But what I'm doing is I'm asking R, theoretically, in this function to go extract the text that I'm selecting with this node. But maybe I'm interested in more than just the text. Maybe I want to extract a hyperlink, for instance. How am I going to do that? Is simply, let's say I want to have the hyperlink for each of the petition. If I click on here, the petition, I can see that there's a hyperlink associated with it where there's more information than simply what we had on the main overview page. So yeah, so basically what we might be interested in, and indeed we're going to do it in a few minutes, we're going to scrape the content of these additional pages. But for that, we need the hyperlink of each of these individual petition pages. So what I'm going to ask R to do in this case within the function is to say, look, you're going to go into this same node that we already identified, which is called petition open A. But here, instead of using the HTML text function, we're going to use another function, which is called HTML attr, and specify that we want the hyperlink, okay? And this is going to go, and instead of creating as an output, simply the petition title, is going to extract the hyperlink associated with this petition. Good. So we want to simply create the function, that is to say we want to run this code, okay? So again, just run this code on your computer. You're going to see that here in your environment, you're going to have the scraping function that is just created, and we're going to use it in a few seconds. But before we move on, do you have any question? So if you have questions, once again, maybe the easiest thing, I think the easiest way to proceed is simply to write in the chat. Then I'm going to go back to you, okay? It's especially useful if lots of people have the same technical problem. But I'm going to assume that it's fine. So let's just take a look at what happens when we actually use the function. So we created the scraping function, okay? And now what we want to do is to apply it. But before we apply it, we want to send R into each of these 17 pages that we're interested in. So I see just a question here. Let me just go back. Okay. What is the parameter x in the HTML function about? It's just to say basically that this is what we want to apply it to. Okay. So we can talk about because basically you see function x. So when we create a function in R, I don't think I'm actually sharing my screen. So please bear with me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to answer your question. So, okay, perfect. So basically, when you create a function right here, you have the x right here. So it's simply saying when you apply this function that we're creating, apply it to what I'm going to enter within the scraping function. But okay, this is really not a workshop on how to create functions. It's interesting to know, but ultimately, you just need to know that you're creating a function that when you're going to apply it a bit later on, it's going to do what each of these lines is going to be asked to do. Okay. So I hope it's useful. Perfect. So good. So we were saying we have the function to scrape the website. The next thing that we want to make sure of is that R knows basically where to get the information, because as of now, the only thing that we have is this one page. Okay, so we have this, but then we want to go into all of the pages, right? We don't want to scrape just the first one. So I'm going to ask you to just take a close look at this up here. Petition okay, page 1. It's already a very good indicator that this is going to be easy to do. Click on the link here to go to page 2. You're going to see that you have page 2. So what we understand from this is that basically we have 17 pages, and maybe you want to play with it on your own computer, but if I manually change each of the numbers, then I'm getting at the pages that I'm interested in. If you're interested in scraping your website, it's always a good indicator if you see that it's as simple as this to create URLs. Sometimes it's a bit more complex. There's different types of websites that you can play with, but yeah, sometimes if it's really, really random, and I know that Google searches have URLs that are random, at least last time that I checked, and it's made basically to avoid people scraping the results. Okay, good. Or it's really, really badly done. So, I mean, there's two options as to why it's not straightforward. Good. So we understood how this web page was working, how to have different hyperlinks. What we want to do now is to, instead of manually doing it, we want to ask R to basically create all of the hyperlinks. So to do that, on line 34 here in section 3, generate all relevant URLs. What we're going to do is we're going to use the sec function. The sec function is simply a function that creates sequences of numbers. So I'm going to tell R, please create all a sequence of numbers from 1 to 17, because I know there's 17 pages, right? Then we're going to run this code on line 34, and I'm going to see that if I put numbers here into my console, okay, I have all numbers from 1 to 17. Good, but that's not enough, right? I need to insert it within the URL. So we have this base URL, which is right here. And you're going to see that if you're interested in scraping and you do it for a few websites, you're going to see that often this alternative number that arises in the URL is located at the end of the URL. And that's especially useful because you only need to basically paste it together. In this case, what we need to do is to paste 3 parts of the URL together. Everything that is before the number, then a number, which is going to be each time from 1 to 17, and then the end of the URL. And this is something that you can do using the paste function. Okay? So paste function is simply going to paste anything that you put in it. So we have the first part of the URL, we have the numbers, again, from 1 to 17, and then we have the end of the URL. And I'm going to specify here that I want to paste all of these things together without including a space between them, which makes sense, right? Because if you have a hyperlink with a space within it, then it's not going to work. So we're simply going to run this code. Okay, we just pasted the numbers to the URL parts. And if I take a look at the URLs, and I have this code here that does it also for you, printing out the first 5 ones, then you're going to see that it created URLs that seem to work for each of the individual petitions. And it's always good to test. So I'm going to copy paste the 5th one. And there you go, it worked. Okay, so I know that now I have all of the 17 URLs that I need for the scraping. So the next part is simply going to be to scrape the website. Good, so I want to scrape each of these 17 URLs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my function. Okay, I'm just going to use this pipeline. Okay, you can use this code in different ways, okay? And this is just a specific type of syntax that you can use in R, and it's simply putting the information forward, okay? Again, not a basic R introduction course, so it's just know that if you run, it's gonna work. If you wonder what this tick and tock, these tick and tock functions are within the code, you notice maybe that at the beginning, I asked you to install a package called TikTok. And it's simply because when you scrape, sometimes it takes a long time for R to scrape the website. So you may be interested in, how long did it actually take R to scrape this? So what TikTok does is when you write tick, okay, it's going to start a counter, like a timer, and it's going to close the timer when you write tock. Okay, so let's just try it. So this is the function to scrape the website. I'm going to run it. Should take, last thing, I think it took me 6 seconds. Okay, 4 seconds, that's good. Okay, so it's really quick now, but the second scraping that we're going to do in a few minutes is going to be a bit more heavy, okay, because we're going to go on all of these individual pages. But as of now, it seemed like it worked, okay? I'm just going to click here. I'm going to ask you if you have questions in a few seconds. But basically, we have run the code. We created this, okay, this data frame called my results. Tibble, sorry. Tibble is it's like a data frame, but just less convenient. So you want to click on this within your working environment. Results. And ta-da! What you can see is that it worked. We actually went on this web page and we have 836 observations. If you go back here, 836 petitions. Okay, so it makes sense. What you can see here is that the link, and this is some particularities that you're going to find with different websites. Usually the hyperlink function is able to scrape the whole hyperlink, but in this case, only scrape the end of the hyperlink, okay? So it's simply because the website is made in this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to manually add this part in a few seconds, but roughly we can see that we have the information that we want, that is quite clean, no petition title, number of signatures, and link. And the next step is simply going to be to add this information that is within each page. But before we move on, do you have any question? Take a few seconds perhaps to take a look at the results. If anything comes to mind, please let me know.
Yeah, hi. What happens Yeah. What happens if you don't know how many pages are? For example, you anticipate. You already knew that there were 17 pages, but what happens if, for example, I want to see pages for the different products in our exports, for example, and we don't know how many are. So how?
That's yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Thank you. So, okay, if there's, first of all, try to find a way to know it. If you really can't, and it's the case in some cases that you simply cannot access this information, what I would suggest is I think if you create a loop, you can basically, but I mean that's how I would intuitively think of how to do this. Is I would run a loop, okay, if you know how to do this in R, and use a function at the end to simply stop the code if an error message arises, which there will be an error message normally if you try to scrape a hyperlink that doesn't exist. Okay, so that's how I would go about it. To say simply run it as many iterations as you want. Maybe enter, I don't know, 10,000. If you see that it stops before, you will see how many pages there were in reality. Okay, that's just my straight out of my head answer for this, but that's how I would proceed, I think. Any other question? Can you also tell R? I'm just going to try to see a bit more of the chat right now. Can you also tell R to scroll through a news feed if there are no pages but one long single page? The thing with news feeds is that sometimes it's interactive, so you need to actually click on something to make sure that it further scrolls down. If that's the case, it's a bit more tricky, and it's not possible to do it with the code that I'm showing today, okay? Because it's something interactive where you need to click, but it's not bringing to a new hyperlink. It's the same hyperlink. That's something different. If it's just a one long single page, yes, that's possible. Okay, but yeah, interactive pages is not something that we're talking about today because it's a lot more advanced. Is there any other question? Okay, I'm just okay, perfect. So I suggest we simply move on. I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. So we were here at line 49. Okay, we just scraped. We have a result. Okay, it's a table or a data frame called my results. And what we might want to do is to take a look at what is encompassed within it. So again, we use this head function, which is simply going to display the five first observations from that data set. And we can see that it makes sense. Again, we already had a look at it visually. It seemed to make sense. The one thing that was problematic again was this link column. And I can tell you, I mean, most of the time when you scrape, there's some of these discrepancies that's going to occur, okay? That the website is done in a way that one of the functions works, but a bit differently than on other websites. So here, I know that this is quite easy to solve because if you go back on the web page and I click here on this petition, it's basically this that we already have, right? Petitions and then number. And then the only thing I need to add for all of them is this part. So I'm going to, again, do the same thing we did a bit earlier. I'm going to use the paste function, which is right here. Okay, I'm on line 55. And then I'm going to simply copy this first part of the URL. And I'm going to paste as well the links that I have already that are incomplete. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. And this here, if you're wondering, this is just the way in R that you're going to select a column. Okay, basically what I'm doing is I'm saying go to this table called my results, and the $sign says, but select this specific column, okay? And this is the information that is within this column. So I'm pasting it together, and it gives me this. Okay, so we're gonna run this. And then we want to always have a sanity check, make sure that it works. So I'm gonna run code on line 57, which is simply displaying the first 5 values of this link clean vector that I created. So when I ran this, I actually created a new column called link clean. And this is what is encompassed within it. And again, simply copy paste it to make sure that, okay, so if you go there, voila, okay. Perfect. So we have all of this, okay? If you ran the code from line 1 to line 59, okay, you know how to scrape in R, so congratulations. What we're gonna do now is simply gonna be a bit of extra, okay? So we know how to scrape this page, we know how to do it for the 70 pages. The next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna go into each of these single pages right here, and we're going to get a bit more information for each of these petitions. So how we're going to do that? We're going to create a new function, which is called within page. Okay, remember our first function was called scraping. We're doing kind of the same thing. The only thing here is I'm not going to be interested in scraping a URL. I already have all the URLs that I'm interested in, so I'm just going to scrape text. So the first thing that I might want to know for each of these petitions is when were they, who were they created by? So if I go back on any individual petition, page, you can check. You can select any that you like, basically, because it's done in the same way for all of them. So I'm going to select Selector Gadget, and I'm going to click here on Created by. Okay, and you're going to see that sometimes with Selector Gadget, depending on how the website is done, it's not going to be possible to isolate just the name, the one information that you want. Sometimes it encompasses in a broader rectangle where there's other information. So what you might want to do is simply select this, okay? And you're going to tell yourself, well, it doesn't bother me that much that I have created by. That's going to be scraped as well, because I can remove it later. It's going to be there in each of the observations, so I can simply automatically remove it, which is going to be the end of the workshop today. But as of now, we see that we selected the right thing. Okay, this is the node for this specific information. We're going to copy it and we're going to paste it right there. And of course, it was already there, so that's the right information. Same thing for the deadline. Okay, again, I'm going to do it quite quickly just to move on. Here, deadline. Okay, and here again, I cannot select only the date, so I have to select deadline, the date, and then all petitions run for 6 months, which is something that I'm going to remove later. So meta deadline, okay, the same. And finally, the description, and here you're going to see again, it's a bit tricky because Selector Gadget doesn't understand exactly what I want, but I'm going to select this, okay, oops, everything is selected. So basically, Selector Gadget thinks I want everything, but I have to tell it no, so I have to select, again, click on something I don't want, okay. This I don't think useful. I actually didn't select the right information, so please bear with me. There you go. This is what I wanted. The description. Good. So again, selected other things. I'm going to unselect some of them, and here is simply the information that I wanted. Okay. I'm going to just put it in, and then I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. So we have this node right here that we selected. It's only this. This is only what we want. Then we're going to put it right here. Okay, and then we're going to run again this function. And we have this new function that is created right here within page. Good. Do you have any question at this stage? Okay, so if there's no questions, I suggest that we simply move on. So let me go back to share my screen. There it is. Okay, so welcome back. We are on line, we just ran this function and we are now on line 67 where we want to scrape the website again, okay? And yeah, so line 67, we are going to check this right here. So this function that we just created is called within page. So within page is going to be run just the same way that we ran the function called scraping earlier. We're going to run this with TikTok. And the reason I added TikTok into this whole code was for this part of the code, because actually it took me, last time, I think when I tested it right before the workshop, it took me 120 seconds. Yesterday it took me 147 seconds, which means it's kind of like 2 minutes, okay? So if you want a bathroom break or go grab something to drink, I think it's a perfect time because I expect that it's gonna take about 2 minutes. During that time, I suggest you simply take a look at the code and write to me if there's any question that you have, okay? Because once we have this additional data frame, we're gonna be able to clean it and then to move on to exporting the data. But as of now, we simply have to wait, okay? So yeah, take time to either take a bathroom break or maybe take a look at if there's, at the code, if there's things that you understood a bit less well. during the time we wait, I was once asked to scrape a French governmental website for a professor of mine, and I actually had to let my code run for the entire night. More than this, I think it was 22 hours that the code scraped. Okay, so it's normal. If you're scraping tens of thousands of pages, it can be long. So just know that's why you want to use functions like TikTok, just to make sure that you record how long it actually took you. Good. So finally, it's done. Okay, a little bit more quickly than the last time I did it. So 130 seconds on my side. I expect that maybe for some of you, it's going to be a bit longer, a bit quicker, depending on the computer you have. Good, or the quality of your internet connection. Perfect. So we have run the code. We see that something new appeared into our working environment, and it's this table here, a data frame, more or less. It's called My Additional Results, and let's take a look at it. Perfect. So again, we have 836 rows, 836 observations for 836 petitions. We can see that here for the first petition, which was about including self-employed and statutory sick pay during blah, blah, blah. We can know that this petition was created by someone named Jane Lawson. We can see the deadline here to submit the petition, to sign the petition, and then the description. Of course, just from looking at it now, we see that there's some things that we might want to clean. Okay, we see that we have this created by that we might want to remove, that there's lots of white space at the beginning and at the end of it. We can see here that maybe in the deadline column, we do not want to include deadline. Maybe we want to remove it. And here, this thing, all petitions run for 6 months, I think, was written everywhere. This also we might want to remove. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that in a few seconds. The first thing you want to do, of course, you check it visually into this view function of RStudio, but you also want to print it out, okay? And if you're familiar with R, you've seen this before, this /n. It's simply a combination of characters that represent white space, okay? White space is any extra empty spaces within a string being characters, numbers, whatever you want as a text format. Perfect. So we can see that this is what the data looks like. But then we want to merge, before we clean it, we might want to merge the two data sets that we have. Okay, we have the information from the overall data, the overall website, and then we have the individual information from the individual petitions. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to use the cbind function. So cbind is simply called cbind because it's column bind. Okay, you're binding the columns together, and then within this function you put my results. Okay, the first thing that we scraped, remember, for the overview, and then my additional results, which was the second thing that we just scraped. Then we want to bind it together and create this final data set that we have here. And ta-da! Okay, what we can see is that we have now 7 variables. Okay, the variables from both data sets together. There's something that already by looking at this is bothering me that I want to remove, is this column right here called link. Because you can see that the link, we discussed it before, it was not a full information. We needed to create this new column called link clean. So maybe something that, the first thing that we want to do is to actually remove. So here I'm on line 83, okay, column names. Here I want to look again at where the link column is. I can see that it's the 3rd column. And this is our syntax, but here I'm basically asking R to create a new data set called final data set. So I'm going to overwrite it and I'm going to say, take this data set that I have, okay, and keep everything except the 3rd column. Okay, so this is just what this is doing. So this would be selecting rows, this is selecting columns, and because I put the minus sign, it says remove this one. Okay. Again, if you're interested in this type of thing, I suggest you look at the additional material that I linked to on my GitHub. Perfect. So we're almost over, okay? So do not despair, we're almost there. Perfect. So we run this code, and now we have this final data set, which has 6 variables because we removed 1, and we do not have this linked vector anymore. Do not run this code here many times, okay? Because since we're writing over and over, what you would do if you ran it multiple times, you would erase the 3rd column every time. Okay, so if you do that by mistake, just create it again, okay, from line 79 and then run it. But just run it once. Good. We have this final data set. Now we want to clean it because we know that this is not clean. We want to send it to a boss that you have, whatever, like you're working for someone, you know that doesn't look good. So you want to clean it. The first thing you want to clean is this variable called created by. So here we can see that there's a few problems. There's a problem that is white space that we want to remove. Again, this /n is simply that. So this is something we're going to do after. But the first thing that I want to remove is actually this created by, because it's there every time. It doesn't bring any new information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this gsub function. And gsub is simply taking any string. So a string is simply, again, collection of words, letters or numbers. And then I'm going to replace it by something else. In this case, I want to replace it by nothing, which means I want to erase it, okay? So the first thing I'm saying in this, the first argument, so the first thing I input within these parentheses before the comma is what I want to change or remove, okay? This is created by. The second argument is going to be what I want to replace it by. So I want to replace it by with nothing. I want to erase it. And the third argument is going to be where do I want to apply this function to? Okay, and I want to apply it to this vector, this column that is called created by. And I'm writing over basically my original created by vector. Let me run it. And then if we take a look at it again, we can see that it removed it. So it worked. The second column that we might want to clean is called deadline. So let's take a look at what the problem was here. Okay, we had different problems. The first one was that we had all petitions run for 6 months, okay? And then we have this deadline that we also want to remove. So information that is always there does not bring any new insights. So we use the same function, gsub, okay? Again, running it. If I check, I should have removed all petitions run for 6 months. It worked. Let me do it again, but to remove the deadline. This here. Okay. Before we move on to removing the white space, does anyone have a question on this? Okay, so the basic cleaning that we are doing right now. No? Okay, so I'm happy. It means everything is clear. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, perfect. So we cleaned these different vectors. Now what we want to do is to remove all this extra white space that we do not want to see in our final data set. Okay, so this like it's just ugly, so we want it out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create a function, and frankly, there's 10,000 ways of doing it. Okay, but in this case, I just created a function because I actually want to apply it to all of the columns within the data set. Because generally, to have white space before or after information within a data set is not good. So, it's not something I want to have in the final product. So if I run line 95 right here, I'm creating this function. If you're familiar with regular expressions, you know that this means basically, and again, this is way too advanced for what we're doing now, to go into details of regular expressions, but this means here, okay, the little hat is like beginning of the string. If at the beginning of the string you have white space, okay, empty space, which is what this code is doing, or if at the end of the string, because the dollar signs here means n, you have white space, remove it and replace it by nothing. We again have this gsub function, right? So it's saying every time you see this, okay, any white space before or after the occurrence of numbers or letters, remove it. What we want to do then is to apply it to the entire data set. So we saw that we created 3 functions overall in this tutorial, right? We created the 2 scraping functions, and now we create this trim function. What I did to apply to the whole final data set is I used a function called sapply, okay? If you're interested in this, it's a very, very useful function. It simply tells R to apply whatever function that you're referring to all of the columns within the data set. I just also, in this case, we want to not have the strings as factors. If you know what I'm referring to, then that's great. If not, it's just a technical detail of how the information is stored. And once we do this, if we take a look, okay, at the final data set that we have, then we can see that, basically it worked, okay? Everything seems clean. Let me just go back there. Et voila. I mean, it looks very clean. All the information is there. We removed what we didn't want. We removed the extra white space. The next thing that we want to do once that we did all of this work is, of course, to save this output that we have. And this is done in one single line using the write CSV function. And how this works is basically you type write CSV, then you input as your first argument what is the name of the data frame, okay, because I converted it to an official data frame right here. What is the name of the data frame that you want to save? And then you indicate where you want to have it on your computer. And let me just show you how magical this is. Okay, I'm gonna run it. Ta-da! And I say, simply save it on my desktop, in this case. And voila, I have on my desktop this new file with the information that we just created. So basically what we did, we went on this web page, okay, that we had with Petition. We started by scraping this information right here, okay, these three first things. Then we went back again, asking R to go to each of these hyperlinks and scrape this additional information right here. And then we merge this information together within one data frame. Good. I'm gonna take 2 minutes to explain to you how to push things further if you're a bit interested in it. I have an exercise that I can suggest to you with an answer. But before I do this, do you have any questions? We cleaned the data set, we removed everything we didn't want. Everything clear? I have a question.
Yes,
Perfect.
a question. I didn't understand how you make the function trim. That the part of gsub when you put all that things. I don't understand basically.
Okay, perfect. So let me take to explain it. It's not super simple. Okay, so again, it's not a workshop on regular expressions, but I'm just gonna explain really quickly. So someone asked a bit earlier, what does this x refer to when we create a function? Okay, it's simply saying whenever I'm gonna use this trim function, I'm gonna input something in it, and this thing is gonna be x. Okay, x whatever. So I'm going to say, look, whatever it is that I'm going to input within this trim function, if you remember, okay, how gsub works, the last thing you want to input is the thing you're interested in modifying. So this is what I'm going to be interested in modifying. And then I'm going to say, instead of writing, I don't know, replace every occurrence of the word apple with nothing, I'm doing something a bit more complex. Okay, and I'm using what we call a regular expression. And a regular expression, there's lots of information about this online. What you do is basically you use these different codes to tell R what you want. Because, you know, it's not like it would be something to remove all the white space, but then it would be really problematic because we would not have spaces between the words anymore. So we cannot just tell R, remove every time you see a space. Like, we have to say, remove every time you see a space, but only if it comes at the beginning of the string before anything else happens, or only if it happens at the end of the string after all of the numbers and the letters are over with. So this is how it works. So this little hat represents the beginning of the string. So it says, at the beginning of the string, if you have white space before anything else occurs, remove it. Okay, this means or. Okay, and here you have the same thing that says at the end of the string, because the dollar sign represents end of the string. Every time you have extra space right before the end, remove it.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. I mean, if you're interested in that further, there's lots of material online. It's really cool, actually. I mean, it's tricky sometimes. Usually I lose a lot of time to find the perfect regular expressions to remove exactly this thing, like remove a 5, everything, every time it occurs after this letter. But yeah, it's just something that's kind of cool to know. Perfect. So the overall, most of the, let me just go back. So Elias is saying most of the on were gone in deadline and created by after the steps, but there's still one in entry 1 description for me. Where did we get rid of the N and why is it it's still in for one of them? So let me just check. really quickly what I have. I have this in my own data set. So are you you're referring to the description, right? So I do not have it in my description. Let me check on. I'm gonna re-share my screen. So let me just check. Okay, here I want to look into my final data set. This is for the description. Okay. Okay, yes, I see it as well. Let me just go back. And I'm sorry if there's a problem with my camera. I hope you can still see roughly what is happening. But yes, so in this case, I think it might be because it comes right after a dot. I'm not sure. But if you want to remove it again, it might be a good idea. That's what I had already done in the first iterations of this code, is to simply add a gsub code to remove all the occurrences of /n. Something that you can do just to make sure. Okay, it's good in this case. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I would simply do it like this. Okay, remove all the occurrences of /n. Okay, I should remove it. Perfect. So I suggest I just show you very quickly what the other material that you can use is, and then I'm going to conclude the workshop. But if you go back onto this repository, you go on web scraping, then workshop, and you have this folder called exercise. And here what I suggest that you do is to try the script. Okay, it's very simple. You don't even need to scrape multiple pages. You can add this though if you're interested and you want to see if you understood it. But let me just open it right here. Exercise. Okay. You have this right here. So what you'll see is that basically I've inputted 3 exclamation points in the exercise to tell you every time there's something that you need to change. Okay. So here you can see on line 26, in the code below, replace each occurrence of node with the nodes identified using select your gadget. Because I'm going to ask you to go onto this web page, which is right here. It's actually kind of the same thing, but for the Canadian government. So if you want to go there, okay. I think a very good exercise this because if you look at the hyperlink, it's more complex. So if you want to adapt the code to scrape multiple pages, it's possible to do it with this web page, just a bit more complicated. So what I'm asking you to do as an exercise is basically to select right here the signatures, the number of signatures, and the MP. Okay, so the number of signatures, the MPs, you can do that with select your gadget. And let me show you. Okay, voila. And then you can try to scrape the website, okay? And yeah, every time there's an occurrence of 3 exclamation points, it means there's something you need to change it for it to work. And you can see that in this very basic code, because look at the code that we have right here. We have, of course, code to install the packages and load them, but ultimately to scrape a website, it's ridiculously easy once you have these functions. So you only need basically to change the nodes right here and to input the URL. And if it's just one page, simply copy pasting the URL. Good. So if that is it, if no one has questions, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join the workshop. Hopefully, we're going to do more of them in the future with the City Lab. But yeah, it was great to have you participate in it. Do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. If you look back at the material and there's something that is not working for you, feel free to contact me. And yes, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you.